The Canada-US border remains closed until at least June 21st. Last week, Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens said that he thinks a reopening could happen by the end of the month of June. Fort Erie Mayor Wayne Redekop joins the source. Wayne, this came from a positive meeting last week with Bill Blair, the Minister of Public Safety.
That's correct. We met, there's about 13 border mayors, 13, 14 that have met with Minister Blair several times. He's committed to meeting us again in a couple of weeks after he's had further consultation with the Prime Minister, and the G7 has had its meeting, which I think is scheduled for early next week.
Is Mayor Dilkens justified in his optimism?
Mayor Dilkens is a very optimistic individual, and he's very energetic, and he is seeing the most favorable side of the equation. I suspect that he's correct, that there will be some movement forward. I think we have to caution people that this isn't going to be a complete opening of the doors of the border. There will be restrictions, hopefully, and they will be, as the minister has said, targeted, focused, incremental, and they will take into account science. The minister did point out some numbers in terms of milestones for first vaccinations, second vaccinations, talked about June 21st, talked about beyond that. And I think when we meet in a couple of weeks, there will be some bones on the framework that he's been talking about, so that will give some hopefully some hope and optimism for others. And it won't be just Mayor Dilkens, but he's very much like our Mayor Diodati. They're very energetic, and they're very progressive in their thinking, and they see things that maybe the minister doesn't. They articulate things that others may not. So it was a very positive meeting for sure.
What is your take on some of the criticisms that people can walk over the border and not have to do the 3-night stay in a hotel, yet those people who are coming into Canada via an airport are confined to that hotel at their own expense for 3 nights?
Right. The people that cross the land borders are still supposed to quarantine. They're still supposed to have the COVID-19 test before they reach the border, before they cross the border. According to Public Health Canada and the CBSA, these individuals are supposed to be quarantining, and apparently there's follow-up. So having said that, it's a little disconcerting when I hear stories about people being dropped off at a local Tim Hortons from a taxi with their suitcases and going into Tim Hortons. One would think that if they're to quarantine, they're supposed to go directly home and stay there. But I think by and large, we've learned that there's a very small percentage of cases associated with the spread of the virus that arise from travel. So that's a positive. And many of these individuals that are traveling now have been vaccinated at least once, because both Canada and the US do have protocols.
In the meeting last week, did that also include some of the New York State mayors?
It didn't. We're dealing with them as matters arise, and so it could be, we have mayors from right across Ontario, so they go out as far as Rainy River, Fort Francis, Sault Ste. Marie, down all the way over to Cornwall. So we're getting a good mix of mayors with from different sized communities with different experiences. We've identified what the issues seem to be, and they're pretty uniform. Part of the problem is that the federal government has to deal not only with a group of Ontario mayors, they have to deal with the provincial premiers, and they also have to deal with mayors right across the country. So we have a pretty good understanding of how the border works, and the minister appreciates that and is looking to us for advice and information relative to how these things will unfold once they're put into place. But there are many Canadians who don't live near the border, and so they don't have quite the sense of immediacy that we do, and they're not. They may not have the family relationships across the border that we do. They may not have property owners from either side of the border like we do, and they may not be as reliant upon the visitors from across the border as our hospitality industry and our tourism operators are. So it's a bit of a different dynamic, but the minister seems to be very engaged, knowledgeable. He's from Toronto, so he's pretty familiar with the territory.
You mentioned the word passport. Is your feeling that that is going to be a factor here is that in crossing the border, one way or the other, proof of vaccination is going to have to be shown.
Well, the minister spoke about being able to certify that people have been vaccinated and then verify that. So I would expect, I mean, it's to me, I know that there's an issue with respect to equity around who can get the vaccination, how available it is to certain populations. But the reality is that by the end of June, I think many of the Canadians who want to be vaccinated will have had at least their first dose. Some will, as you know, because of the acceleration of vaccinations, will have had their second dose, and we'll be heading towards a very good critical mass of Canadians. So I think that we're in a great situation as far as that program to vaccinate Canadians. The Americans, a little different dynamic. Many of those who are going to be vaccinated or want to be vaccinated have had at least one dose, and their numbers have stalled around 50%. So that that will be a challenge. But as I said before, I think many of the people that want to cross the border, many of the people who own property, as an example, in Fort Erie along Lake Erie, they probably have the vaccination. They understand the importance of it. So I don't think that'll be much of a problem for them. Same thing with respect to family reunifications. I would expect that the people that cross the border frequently in any event because of family reasons likely have nexus. And so they're more inclined to get with the program and understand what the requirements are in order to be able to cross that border with ease.
Wayne, thanks for joining us today. Another meeting with Minister Blair in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll check in with you then. Thanks again.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Mike.